Labor says it could unveil $200 billion in tax cuts in 4 years' time, but only if the budget can afford it. The opposition has released its costings, promising a better budget bottom line than the coalition every year. The government says the numbers are fishy and could only be achieved through more taxes.
Labor says it has nothing to hide.
This is the earliest any opposition has released budget costings ever.
And while the presentation was a little off-Broadway, Chris Bowen says the numbers speak for themselves.
A surplus next financial year, the same year as the government. Bigger budget surpluses over the forward estimates, 40% larger than the government.
The budget bottom line would be $17 billion better off over 4 years under Labor, $87 billion over 10 years. Only possible because of $154 billion in extra tax measures.
Under Bill Shorten, if given the chance in government, would be the highest taxing government in Australia's history.
In the event of worsening economic conditions, Labor has indicated the surplus could shrink because it will not scrap its spending commitments.
We'll keep our election promises.
The opposition has opted to let the government trumpet on income tax cuts by $230 billion over 10 years. But Labor is now earmarking $200 billion for its own tax cut, only if the budget can afford it. And as for who would get it...
Working parents of Australia, the nearly million households whose income is less than $174,000. Vote for Labor for real change and to end the chaos in childcare.
The government says detail is also lacking on a pay rise for childcare workers.
They talk about they're going to pay extra money for childcare workers, but apparently only half of them.
We have an envelope of funding. We have an envelope of funding. What Labor does with its envelope of funding is we're going to improve the wages of early childhood educators.
No funding yet, though, for a planned increase to New Start.
They talk about increasing New Start. Is there any money in there for New Start? No, there's not.
New Start, we've made very clear, we'll have a review. Now, the choice between the Australian people is the government, who says no problem.
In 2016, Labor was also pledging a better bottom line than the coalition, but only over 10 years. This time around, it says it will trump the government each and every year. The heavy lifting is being done by Labor's decision to scrap cash refunds for franked dividends. So Labor's simple calculation is the credit it will get from a better budget bottom line will more than offset any votes it loses to unhappy retirees. Tom Connell, Sky News, Canberra.